Overlord Volume 8 Side 2, 2 halves, retranslated by Nigel, edited/proofread by Deus Ex Machina Part 3 10:30 Nazarick time. You're making too much noise. Quiet down. Ainz motioned with his left hand, and held that pose. He took a step back and returned to his original position. You're making too much noise. Quiet down. Once again, he motioned with his left hand and froze mid-pose. He checked the reflection of himself in the mirror, and slightly adjusted the position of his left hand. Good? Is this the spot? No. Would it be cooler if I extended my hand a bit more to the left? He returned to his initial position. You're making too much noise. Quiet down. Finally satisfied with the pose, Ainz grabbed the memo pad on the table beside him. Since I've finished the pose, I should practice the lines while I have extra time. He circled the phrase he was practicing earlier with a pen, and then turned a page. The majority of the sentences written on there were variations on the phrase "I shall consider it." The phrases that were too dull or too over the top, and thus too lame, were all crossed out. For Ainz, who used to be an average person, acting like a leader was difficult. Thus, he repeatedly practiced playing that role just in case a situation called for it. Of course, the entire memo pad was filled with phrases Ainz came up with. Even though an hour had passed since Ainz started practicing, he did not require any rest. Ainz was the supreme overlord, but in reality, he barely did anything. Unless there were important decisions or emergency situation that required his leadership, there was nothing to do. Albedo took care of all the details, and all Ainz had to do was skim through the reports. Since there was never anything in the reports that required his attention, he really just skimmed through them all. It was a little dangerous for a ruler, but as long as Albedo was around, and there was no emergency, there would be no problem. All proper organizations should be like this anyways. It's not good for someone who stands above others to work on the front lines. It was a foolish move for the supreme commander of an army to participate in the fighting on the front lines, unless he was there to raise morale. If he did, it would be very dangerous. I should give up this adventurer business and gather knowledge to deal with emergency situations. I know I have to train my mind as well, but what should I do? Who's going to teach me? How can I not ruin the image of Ainz Ulgaun that everybody believes in? Everyone inside Nazarick respected Ainz as an absolute ruler, and knelt before him. That was right. Ainz received respect from his subordinates, which his had former comrades created, who were, in some ways, their children. Just like how a father could not the respect his children placed in him, he could not betray them as well. That was why he practiced acting, in the hope that he could at least appear to play the part. Of Saya 0 RSE, Ainz was fully aware that it was embarrassing. Otherwise, why would he lock the door and forbid the maids and the 8 edge assassins that guarded him from entering? Sometimes, he would even plant his face in the pillow and scream "Arf," when he could not stand it anymore. Something fitting the supreme overlord of Nazarick. A form that one can respect. Ainz felt like he would cough up blood as he flipped through the pages. There were still many more lines which he had come up with in his spare time, and the finish line seemed nowhere in sight. Ainz Ulgaun was undead and emotions over a certain threshold were suppressed. But I need a break. The remnant of Suzuki Satoru was weary from mental fatigue, and he wailed. I'm sick of this, he cried. However, Ainz silenced that cry with a grinding of his teeth. What am I doing? I need to work harder. After rebuking himself for trying to run away, Ainz's eyes filled with strength, and he looked himself in the mirror again. Suddenly, a digital pip-pip-pip noise rang out. The sound coming from the bracelet on his left arm was like music to Ainz's ears. He turned off the sudden beeping and sighed deeply. If time's up, then it can't be helped. Yes, time's up. Ainz returned the memo pad to a box. When he closed the lid, he could hear the sound of several locks engaging. If someone tried to forcefully open the box, it would trigger an extensive array of attack spells, all of which would be centered on the box to destroy it. The defenses on the box were formidable enough that nobody, but a level 90 rogue-type character, or a level 80 specialized rogue character could breach them. After securely locking the item, he returned it to his pocket dimension. There were many other rare items in there as well. Still, a high-level thief could steal items from a place like that as well. That said, a thief could not just immobilize his opponents and rob them blind. They were limited to 1 or 2 items at the most. Still, the prospect of being robbed just once or twice made Ainz, who should have known no fear as one of the undead, shudder in terror. In addition, unknown powers such as talents existed as well. That was why he placed the box among other rare items, so thieves would steal them instead of the box. After he put it away, he checked it again to make sure. It was as though he were a housewife checking that the main door was locked before heading on a trip. After he did so, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Only after doing all that did Ainz finally leave his bedroom. The place he was headed to was the room he regularly used as the study. The ones who bowed deeply to him there were the regular maid, Albedo, and Mare. The first 2 were hardly a rare sight, but the boy did not come here often, and it surprised Ainz. He cut across the room, circled around his ebony table, and sat down, in a way which he had practiced over 30 times before. Sitting in this way meant not stepping on his robe, or making noise, when pushing his chair out of the way. After that, he had to be careful about how he leaned back in the chair. It would not look good if his movements were too rushed, or if he put too much weight into the back of his chair. Kings had a kingly way, maybe, of sitting down. But I don't know how kings take a seat. I should go observe how a king sits down. It was recommended for company men to lightly sit in the middle of the chair, without leaning on the backrest. But Ainz was no longer a company man. Therefore, all Ainz could do was realize the image of an ideal king within his mind. Raise your heads. It was only then that the 3 of them looked up. Ainz was annoyed by the fact that they would not raise their heads without an explicit command, and he felt that it was a waste of time. Still, he could not disregard the loyalty they showed their master. Therefore, Ainz bore with it every time, and replied in the same way. Then I shall begin with a question. Mare. What business do you have? Ah yes. Perhaps Mare was nervous, but his voice cracked a little. Ainz smiled. Of course, there was no way his fleshless face could twist itself, but he still did his best to exude an air of kindness. Perhaps Mare had sensed it, but he breathed a sigh of relief. He seemed less stiff now. Ah I brought it. Ainz was not a cruel superior who would go, what did you bring? Since Mare had brought it, Ainz ought to receive it from him. For all he knew, it might have been an order he had given and forgotten about. Really now no, that's fine. Ainz reached out a hand to stop the day's duty maid as she sought to take the item from Mare. Mare, hand it to me in person. Yes. Mare held his chest high as he walked up to Ainz and gave him the folder he was holding. Ainz magnanimously accepted the folder and opened it. This is the circular I sent out. All 3 guardians had circled going to Ainz's invitation. By right, Cocytus should have sent a minion to deliver this to me. Thank you for going to all this trouble, Mare. And not at all, it's nothing of the sort. Cocytus-san was busy, so I insisted on helping him. And besides, Mare lovingly caressed the ring on his left ring finger. That's the ring of Ainz Ulgaun. No, I'm glad he values it so highly, but putting it on that finger means, more to the point, why is that boy looking at me with dewy eyes? Ainz shivered, and then he glanced aside to Albedo. She was smiling kindly, as always. Ainz's line of sight shifted to Albedo's left ring finger. As expected, she had worn her ring there, just like Mare. It seemed as though it was the right place to wear the ring. Where did that practice come from? It was from ancient Greece, right? He recalled what Yumeko had once told him about the meaning of wearing a ring on different fingers. Apparently, the ancient Greeks believed there was a blood vessel which ran from the left ring finger to the heart, and so if the left ring finger touched something harmful to the body, it would send a signal to the heart, which was why they dispensed medicine with their left ring fingers. Does sous-chef do the same thing too? Ah, this is bad, he's gazing at me again. Ainz meshed his fingers on the table. What is it, Mare? Did you see something? Has something gotten onto my face? He chose his words carefully, making sure his reply did not sound like mockery. No, not at all. I simply thought you looked very handsome, Ainz-sama. I am handsome? Ainz unconsciously stroked his bony face. Fuhaha, you're quite the flatterer, Mare. It's not flattery. The loudness of that voice did not sound like it could have come from Mare. Forgive me, Ainz-sama. But I really do think you look handsome. Even just now, the way you sat down looked just like how the supreme ruler of Nazarick ought to be. Ainz looked questioningly at the duty maid. The homunculus sensed her master's intentions and nodded silently and vigorously, as if to say, precisely. Ainz did not look at Albedo, yet she was also nodding vigorously, and there was a pata-pata sound as her wings flapped. Really now? That is good to hear. After that brief reply, Ainz rose from his seat and walked before Mare, then gently patted the head of the boy who had tensed up in anticipation of a scolding. It was a casual act, yet one filled with kindness. Ainz-sama. Thank you, Mare. Your words have always pleased me. It was incredibly embarrassing to say that, but he did not display any of these Suzuki Satoru-like emotions. I have always been thinking this, I ought to thank my friends. Do you mean the supreme beings? Ainz knelt, so his eyes were level with Mare's. Precisely. I want to thank them for making the great underground tomb of Nazarick, and for making you and everyone else. You, and by this I mean Albedo and Sixth as well. Albedo's wings stood fully erect. The maid who had just been suddenly addressed was in a panic. She was typically calm, so after seeing this rare side of her, Ainz laughed cheerfully. You are all my treasures. Ainz scooped up Mare. I can hardly bear to let Bukabukagama-san have you. Thank you, Ainz-sama. Tears of joy streamed down Sixth's cheeks as she answered on behalf of Mare. When all the supreme beings left this place, only you remained here until the end, and everyone in Nazarick is grateful for that. Perhaps we have failed to meet your expectations, and perhaps we have often upset you. I understand that speaking in this way to our Creator is deeply rude, but I pray you will allow that you will permit us to pledge our undying loyalty to you. I permit this. I recall that in the past, Albedo and Demiurge said something similar to me, so hear this: I am the master of Nazarick. I am your master, Ainz-Ulgaun. Ainz had never rehearsed these lines before, so he was quite surprised by how smoothly he could recite them. However, when he thought about it, that was only to be expected. Since he was speaking from the heart, it made sense that he could do so in such a natural manner. Mare hugged Ainz and buried his face in Ainz's shoulder. Good thing I'm not wearing my usual gear, the calm part of Ainz's mind said. He felt a wet sensation spreading through the shoulder of his robe, but Ainz left Mare where he was. As the sound of Mare's sniffling gradually died down, Ainz gently caressed his head. Ainz produced a handkerchief from his pocket. He had never wiped someone else's face before, so perhaps his movements were a bit rough, but Mare allowed Ainz to wipe him. Come now, Mare. Go wash your face. What about you, Ainz-sama? I'll be heading over to E-Rantel afterwards. I need to meet the guildmaster. I've been putting it off because it's annoying, but I can't delay it any longer. Now then, Ainz glanced at Albedo, who had been remaining silent all this while. Her long hair covered her face, and he could not see her expression. However, the non-stop quivering of her body was enough to strike terror into Ainz's heart. The image of a volcano simmering with anger, on the verge of eruption, flashed through his mind. What's wrong, Albedo? And in that moment, Gyugawarg. Ainz's field of vision shifted just as he felt an impact on his back. Naturally, it did not hurt. Ainz's body could only be harmed by magical means. He did not feel pain from the light impacts which resulted from bumping into things. However, the remnants of his humanity made him shut his eyes in reflex. This sudden development left him unable to think. The mental makeup of the undead meant that they did not panic, or the like, so this confusion must have been Suzuki Satoru's. NGGHHH. He opened his eyes, and saw the 8 edge assassins on the ceiling. In other words, he was on his back. When he realized this, Ainz immediately tried to stand up, but a strangely soft object pinned his entire body down, and thanks to that, it was hard to move. Impossible. My items grant me immunity to mobility impediments such as pinning. I should have been liberated the moment I was completely immobilized. In other words, someone's using a very powerful binding technique on me. Ainz checked to see what was the soft life form pinning him down, and as expected it was Albedo. Ainz Sama. Albedo was straddling Ainz in a full mount, and pushed him back down as he tried to rise. What's this? What's happening? I can't take it anymore. Albedo suddenly opened her eyes. Her flaring golden pupils sent a chill down Ainz's spine. What are you saying? Albedo ignored Ainz's panicked question, and instead brought her hands to the front of her dress. With a hng of effort, she tried to pull it off, but she could not budge it. Magical clothing is so annoying. You need a skill to destroy it, or take it off normally. Calm yourself, Albedo. Get off me. Ainz thought to push her off with sheer brute force, but Albedo was a level 100 warrior. Also, whenever Ainz tried to push her away, his hands made contact with something soft and squishy, so he could not use his full strength. Albedo's hands moved, seeking to remove Ainz's robe. Don't take my clothes off. Stop wiggling your hips. Why it's your fault, Ainz-sama. I've been bearing with it for so long, but then you said that and I couldn't take it anymore. It's all your fault, Ainz-sama. I just need a little bit. Just a bit. Just a little bit. A little bit of your love. Just count the 8 edge assassins on the ceiling, and it'll be over before you're done. If Albedo had chosen this moment to scold Ainz for changing her backstory, perhaps he would have lost the will to resist. However, Albedo looked like she was going to swallow him whole, and so he did not feel guilt, but the terror of one who was about to be devoured. That instead caused him to struggle even more desperately. It was only then that his subordinates, who had been stunned by the sudden development, finally went into action. Albedo-sama has gone mad. Albedo-sama has gone mad. The 8 edge assassins descended as one from the ceiling. Pull her off, Ainz-sama. No, don't try to immobilize her, she'll slip free right away. Just pull her away with brute force. No good. What's with this strength? I'd expect nothing less of the Guardian Overseer. Mare-sama, we request your aid. Awawa. Oh, okay. In the end, Ainz was finally freed, and after smoothing out his rumpled robes, he looked to Albedo, who was seized hand and foot by the 8 edge assassins, and said, Albedo shall be confined for 3 days. The 8 edge assassins dragged Albedo from the room. Ainz-sama, are you all right? I'm perfectly fine. Has Albedo always been that strange? Did she eat something funny? Granted, demons don't need to eat or drink, but it's not like they can't. As Ainz asked that question, Mare averted his eyes. I see, no, well, she must have a lot going on. For all I know, it could be pent-up stress from work. Ainz rose to his feet and called out to the maid. He regained his dignity, which had been previously scattered to the winds, and spoke in a commanding tone. Summon Narbril and Hamsuk. It is time for me to leave for E-Rantel. 13:35 Nazarick time. Ainz pulled on the reins from where he was mounted on Hamsuk's back, bringing Hamsuk to a halt. He silently regarded E-Rantel's city gates. Ainz quite liked these thick and sturdy gates, which looked like they could repel an army. While there were many gates in Yggdrasil which were bigger and cooler looking than this one, this gate was not a mass of data, but made by the hands of mankind, although they might have had magical assistance. As he stood before these gigantic steel gates, an indescribable feeling welled up inside him. There were guilds in Yggdrasil who conquered cities too. In the past, I thought it was troublesome to use a location that was so difficult to defend as a guild base, but I think I can understand those guilds now. Ruling a big city might be a male ambition. In Yggdrasil, there were frequent city battles between guilds. Many of Ainz Olgaun's members simply watched coldly from the side, unable to understand them, but there had been those who said they wanted to take part. Were they battle maniacs? In the past, Ainz had not liked those words much, but when he thought about it now, they were good memories. Is something the matter, my lord? Not at all, don't worry about it. Hamsuk had been curious and asked its question, because its master had bade it stop, and yet had not done anything. Ainz's flat reply had shut down that topic. He felt embarrassed about letting Hamsuk know that he was reminiscing about the past. Now then, to the Adventurers Guild, where we'll show our faces for the meeting, and then immediately take on a monster extermination quest. He could have stayed in an E-Rantel inn, but he did not have the luxury of making such pointless expenditures. The reason why Ainz, who did not eat or drink, had to book a room in the highest-end inns was purely to highlight his status as the most highly placed of adventurers. After that, it was a matter of making connections. However, he had already met all the influential people in this city, and he was assured that they would receive him warmly if he sought them out. Therefore, Ainz had no need to book a room at an inn. Besides, whenever Ainz checked into an inn, he would immediately teleport back to Nazarick, where he would produce undead and work on other things. That being the case, it would be wiser to take a monster extermination mission and leave the city as soon as possible. Frankly speaking, he did not feel that there was further merit in staying around E-Rantel. Is that so? Verily, my lord does enjoy battle. It's not like I enjoy it or anything. Besides, when I wipe out monsters, I take them out right away, and spend most of the time in Nazarick. Ainz lightly rapped Hamsuk's large head. I intend to give you all sorts of training so you can use weapons and armor. This one has always been working hard. This one has asked the lizard men to teach this one all manner of tricks, and soon this one will surely be able to learn a super move. Ho. Well now, it would be perfect if you could learn martial arts. Also, how about your fellow disciple? Do you think he'll be able to use martial arts? You mean him? He never speaks, so this one does not know. However, this one feels he cannot use them yet. Indeed, Ainz thought. There was no way that one would enjoy speaking, and Ainz felt that the chances of it being able to learn martial arts were slim. It was little more than an experiment. That said, if a Death Knight created by Ainz could actually learn warrior techniques, their future plans would have to be greatly altered. That was because if he could strengthen monsters by training them, then it would most likely become a top priority. The undead do not need to sleep, and neither do they tire. They can perform combat training forever. So in theory, he ought to have learned martial arts before Hamsuk. The fact that he has not probably indicates that it's not possible. A moment please. He strives hard in his own way. Even after this one returns to this one's abode, he continues training without a single word of complaint. I pray thee spare his life. No, I did not intend to kill him, you know. What exactly did you take me for? Indeed, there is nobody more merciful in all this world than Ainz Sama. Ainz Sama even took pity on a pathetic little creature like you and spared your life. Those frigid words came from Narbril, who was riding behind them, and they made Hamsuk shudder. Nabe, we're coming up on E-Rantel. Address me as Maman from now on. Understood. Also, Hamsuk is a being with an important part to play in the plan to strengthen Nazarick. You must take the appropriate attitude with those who work for Nazarick's sake. I am not simply referring to Hamsuk, so keep that in mind. Yes. My deepest apologies. Also, stop calling humans ticks or lice or whatever, Ainz wanted to say, but no matter how he ordered her, Narbril would not listen, so recently he had decided not to bother. That was because if Narbril Gamma had been designed to unconsciously refer to human beings in such a manner, forcing her to correct herself would essentially be trampling the wishes of his friend who had designed her that way. All right, let's go. Yes, my lord. Ainz rode forth on Hamsuk. He could see several people lined up in front of the gate. It was only to be expected that immigration would be more strictly vetted than emigration, and all items they carried would be carefully inspected. Therefore, if traveling merchants or peddlers wanted to enter E-Rantel, they might have to spend a long time queuing up for an inspection. I hope it won't take too long. Should you not have priority in going in, Maman San? Narbril asked while they were lined up behind several travelers, including a group in adventurer's garb. She was right. When Ainz had first come here, he too had been subjected to extremely troublesome checks, but as his adventuring record grew, the inspection process had grown simpler, and now he practically had a free pass to walk right past them. In addition to that, sometimes he received permission for preferential entry to the city. This privilege was not unique to Darkness. Just about all mithril-ranked adventurers and above received such special treatment. Perhaps it was because the city did not want to displease their trump cards. In that case, why not just do away with the entry toll as well? The tolls were inexpensive compared to the payments adventurers received, but Ainz was the top outside earner for Nazarick, and having to pay displeased him. That said, he could not bypass the walls with flight magic either. Maman was a hero. Therefore we can't cut in line, unless there's an emergency, or we have to enter the city with all due haste. He saw Narbril bow from the corner of his eye, and Ainz looked ahead of him from where he was mounted on Hamsook's back. Still, they're not moving at all. The queue was just like a highway choked up by a traffic jam. Nobody was moving. What's this? It looks like they're inspecting a cargo wagon, and doing a pretty good job of it too. No, they're just surrounding it. Did they find some contraband? Excuse me. Ainz called out to an unsophisticated-looking man in front of him. Ah, yes. What is it? Don't worry, I just noticed that the line wasn't moving, so I was wondering if you knew what was going on. I'm not too clear about what's going on, just that they took a village girl to the duty station. And then after listening to the man, Ainz still had no idea what was going on. He stuck his neck out towards the duty station. He tilted his head to listen in, and heard the sound of an argument. Suddenly, something piqued Ainz's curiosity. When he had first come to this city, they had asked him a whole pile of questions at the main gate, but he had not expected to be let past so easily. He had been surprised at the time, and thought that this world was surprisingly kind to rootless people like mercenaries, adventurers or travelers, but the truth had not been what he had expected. In that case, what were they asking this village girl? Currently, Ainz's status as an adamantite-ranked adventurer meant that very few cities would refuse him entry. That was why Ainz wanted to know exactly what sort of questions were being asked. In the future, he might have to infiltrate a city in future outside the guise of Maman the adamantite-ranked adventurer. He had to learn more so there would be no difficulties when the time came. You two wait here for a while. I'll go see what's going on. Please allow me to accompany you. There's no need for that. I'm just taking a look. He dismounted from Hamsook's back, and walked towards the duty station. All the soldiers exclaimed in surprise as they saw Ainz. There was nobody here who did not know the adventurer Maman in E-Rantel. Ainz took care to look as cool as possible as he approached the duty station. He saw an excited-looking magic caster, a soldier, and a seated village girl. We wish to enter the city, but what's going on? You. The two men exclaimed in the same surprise as the soldiers outside. The village girl was stunned when she saw it. If it isn't Maman-sama himself. Forgive us. Now, what's going on here, HM? This girl is. She seemed familiar. Ainz felt that he knew her, and he searched his hippocampus though he did not possess such an organ for information confirming her. Yes. We were investigating a suspicious girl, which took some time. We sincerely apologize for inconveniencing you. Maman-sama. Ainz was beginning to find the man's chatter intolerable. Then, inspiration struck, and he recalled the village girl's name. Enri, right. You must be Enri Amat, am I correct? Who are you? No, I am. You were the one who came with Nfiria that time, right? I don't remember speaking to you. Did Nfiria tell you my name? At that moment, Ainz instinctively pressed his hand over his mouth. He had met Enri when he was the masked magic caster Ainz Ulgaun. Now, he was the adamantite-ranked adventurer in jet-black armor, Maman. Crap. I spoke in my normal voice. This is terrible. I need to leave here right away. But still, what's that village girl doing here? Won't it be troublesome if she finds Ainz here? I need to clarify the details with her. She did not seem to have divined his true identity from the conversation just now, but he could not rule out the possibility that he had been exposed. Granted, he did not think she would have matched his voice from several months ago to a few words spoken through a layer of armor, but it was best to be prudent. Ainz beckoned the magic caster over. He felt that the man ought to know more than the soldiers. He led the magic caster out of the duty station, and they went some distance away, to avoid being overheard by the sentries. It's like this, that girl's a friend of a friend. Can you tell me what happened with her? He was not lying, since Nymphyria was indeed a friend of Ainz and Mammon. The magic caster's eyes went wide. He appeared to be shocked, but that was not the case. It was more like connecting points of data to form a beautiful line. It was as though a mystery in his heart had been solved. I see, as I thought. Could you please hurry up the process of accepting the facts? Ainz very much wanted to say that, but he bore with it, and waited for the man to speak. She said she was just a village girl, but she was carrying a powerful horn-shaped magic item. I wasn't sure why she had such a powerful item, and I had other questions of my own, so I wanted to clarify things. What sort of horn was it? What effects did it have? Its effects were after listening to the whole explanation, Ainz could not help looking up to the sky. That was because he was trying to run away from the knowledge that it was an item which he had given her. At that time, Ainz had not known that such an item was beyond the comprehension of this world. He had given her the horn simply for her to protect herself. Who could have imagined that it would have created so much trouble for her? Ainz could probably have come up with an excuse along the lines of I did nothing wrong, but ignoring her plight was not good either. I'll help her out a little. I didn't do anything wrong, but I did give her the item, after all, so the responsibility lies with me. If I abandon her, and it falls into someone else's hands, it'll end up being more troublesome for me. Besides, if she gets locked up, Nymphyria knew that Mammon and Ainz were one and the same. Given these circumstances, if Henry told him about this, he would surely think that Ainz had left her to her fate. It'll definitely leave a bad aftertaste between us. I don't care about causing difficulties with worthless humans, but he's a very valuable being. As the saying goes, I ought to turn this danger into an opportunity. If I lend her a hand, Nymphyria ought to be grateful to me. If I do this, I can chain his heart closer to me with more obligations. Ainz spoke in a tone which he believed combined calmness and dignity. There is no need for you to worry. I am very familiar with her character. She will not go around causing trouble, so could I impose upon you to let her pass? Could you?